All right. Here we've got Kurt Raschke.
Thank you. I'm Kurt Raschke with New York City Transit and the Department of Subways. Before we start, quick show of hands. Who's ever used Google Street View to see someplace before you go there? Pretty much everyone. Or I think Bing has similar functionality now too. Okay, so yeah, it's kind of nice to be able to know what something looks like before you get there, which is something that we don't exactly have the benefit of for the folks who work on the subway. So 2013, 2014, immediately post Sandy, a lot of new challenges, but also a lot of new ideas. There was a lot of work that needed to be done on the system. We were putting a lot of people out in the field to do surveys and plan the resiliency measures and also the recovery work that needed to be done. And essentially that requires a lot of track time and that requires service diversions, and nobody likes service diversions. So, of course, people then say, well, hey, why can't we have Google Street View for the subway? It's a logical idea. It works for streets. It's really nice. You can go and see where you're going to go before you get there. You can even go back in time. And, it turns out that's something we really needed too, because we wanted to know not just what do things look like now post Sandy, but what did it look like before? Now, of course, we're never going to get that because we didn't capture that imagery. But going forward, wouldn't it be nice to be able to go back in time and see what things used to look like? See how things change over time. So, late 2014, we went and put a spherical camera on a track cart and we pushed it through the Greenpoint Tube, which is the tunnel that connects the G between Brooklyn and Queens, and threw together a little prototype, and it worked and people liked it. And so, of course, then, yeah, great, let's go push that cart through 722 miles of tunnel. No, not quite. So, we've got these really neat trains, the track geometry car. Has anyone ever seen one of those going by? A few folks. And so we went ahead and said, well, okay, why don't we go and install spherical cameras on the track geometry car so that when they go out and conduct tests, we can actually capture spherical imagery. And that's what we did. So we now have spherical cameras on the front and back of both of our track geometry cars that run in the system. And so every time they go out, they're capturing spherical imagery of the system. We bring that back. We built an image processing pipeline and a website for viewing all of this information that we'll demo next. And now I should point out something about that. The track geometry cars historically captured forward facing video. And so you might say, well, gee, why do you need this? Well, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. First of all, forward facing video, not spherical. It's a narrow field of view, kind of grainy, not very high res. Also, you have to go to an office in Brooklyn and sit there and play with this like mid 90s software that's kind of like a VCR. Not exactly the Google Street View experience. So that was really one of the key things, was we want this to be accessible to everyone in the organization. And I'm skipping around a little bit, but as of today, we have a little over 1,400 users across the agency. And what do they use it for? Well, just about everything. They use it for situational awareness. They use it to know what parts of the system look like before they go out there. They use it as an adjunct to field surveys. It doesn't eliminate the need for field surveys, but it means that you can be more informed before you go out somewhere. Certainly, it gets used for training. It gets used for everything. That's one of the most interesting things about this project, is that the growth of our user base has been almost entirely organic. We show it off to people and they say, I want that. And then we get emails from 10 of their colleagues going, I want that thing my colleague has, because it's really just so transformative. And if you think about the extent of the subway, we work in Lower Manhattan or in Brooklyn. If you want to go see something on the right of way up in the Bronx or out in the Rockaways, that basically just killed half a day. You're going to go out there, look at it for 5 minutes, take some pictures, take some measurements, turn around, head back to the office, and that's it. And that was probably a 2.5-hour excursion. Not necessarily the best use of time. So now you can sit at your desk and do that. And wow, isn't that nice? Briefly, we'll take a look at it, but what's the technology stack? Since this is transportation techies, really just gluing together a lot of open source components. We take the metadata from the images. Oh, by the way, of course, obviously GPS doesn't work underground. So how do we know where these images are? Pretty simple. So there's an analyst on the track geometry car who basically runs the system. And what they do is they'll pull up to a known location and they punch in where that is. And then it's basically just counting wheel rotations as the car moves along the track. So we're really not dependent on GPS. It does collect GPS above ground, but we don't really need that. So we dump that all into a PostGIS database, and then we've got a little Django web app, Leaflet, Marzipano, which is a library for viewing panoramas. It's actually a Google project. Bootstrap, just because why not? Because it's nice for things to look pretty. Um, so yeah, that's the basics. Let's actually take a look at it. So this is TunnelView, and we're going to view the map. Obviously, actually, let's take a quick look at the stats. I just dumped a bunch of images in last night, so we've got 3.5 million right-of-way images in there now, and a little over 1,200 track geometry car runs. This has been live since about 2015, and we've been capturing data. And so this is not. We actually still don't have the entire system for reasons I won't get into, but we have a large proportion of the system. And so let's just go ahead and take a look. So this is tunnel view, and it truly is street view for the subway right of way. And so you can actually see this is a full spherical image of somewhere. Where are we? Oh yeah, okay. We're in the Steinway tube. Um, this is the 7 train, just past Grand Central. That's the front of the track geometry car behind us. And going forward, and again, you can see that, like, so basically that's about the field of view you would have gotten with the old track video system. And the point is that now, if you want to go and look at something on the tunnel wall, you can go and zoom in and, actually see things. And we really didn't have that before. And again, this is also, it's a modern web-based viewer. We have the little tunnel view person, and I can actually drag them along and move where I am on the track. And those are all sort of modern features that we didn't used to have. And of course now it decides not to load. Oh, there we go. um, and again, you can think about it, basically anything that you might have done in a field survey, except for, say, for example, taking measurements. That's something we want to get to a little further on. You can't actually take measurements because there isn't, say, a point cloud behind this. So it doesn't meet that use case. But if you want to look at something, let's say you're going to go, fix that piece of track right there tomorrow night. Well, now you can actually see what it looks like. And certainly we've got a lot of great people on staff who actually know that piece of track like the back of their hand because they work out there every day. But we also have a lot of people who don't necessarily. And so that's really, those are the folks that TunnelView is actually great for, because it gives them that insight and that awareness to things that they wouldn't have otherwise seen. Other things, let's take a look. Let's see, that's something else. That's something else. Um, that's all boring. Here we go. The image quality is a lot better outdoors, as you might expect. And so that's where it really shines. You can see that, it really gives you that sort of you are there immersive experience that you just don't get otherwise. And again, it saves you having to be out on the tracks dealing with safety issues, diverting trains, blah blah blah. um, what else have we been up to? We have, there we go. We have some stations. Um, and we have some station plans, although they're only 2D. Um, but even this is the sort of thing where you want to know what some obscure little feature of a station looks like. Well, you can either get on the train and go take a look at it, or you can pull it up in tunnel view. And I've gotten emails from people that are basically, you just saved me an hour running around in the field because I was able to look stuff up on tunnel view. We've even tried to expand into a few other things. This is an elevator shaft at Clark Street, because why not? Um, because very, very few people in the system know what this looks like. And so we went and stuck a spherical camera on a tripod, um, and ran the elevator up and down. And so you can actually, if I pan all the way up, you can actually go up the elevator shaft, because this is not something that very many people actually see. And yet it's really important for people at transit to understand what our assets actually are. These are not just things in a spreadsheet. These are not just things in a database. These are actual physical assets that really exist in the real world. And being able to sort of make that connection for folks and say, You want to know about the elevator at Clark Street? Well, here you go. You want to know what this segment of track looks like or what this station looks like? Here you go. Um, and so that's the basics. One thing I'll point out, this, by the way, that's a leaflet map too. So yeah, leaflet is definitely great for repurposing as an image viewer. Um, sort of next steps, we've gotten an incredible amount of value internally out of the project as it stands. But there's still a lot of things we'd love to do. We'd love to expand our coverage of things that are off the right of way because, we're doing great at getting images off the track geometry car, but we would love to have a more sustainable process for getting things like track images, or station images, I should say, as well as things like all these, random little rooms in stations and all that stuff. Also, eventually tying in with things like our asset management system. So you can actually click on something in an image and say, what is this? When was it last worked on? Being able to click on something in a track image, or vice versa, pulling up a track image and saying, okay, here's all the defects in this track segment. Those are the kinds of things where, again, giving people that immediacy of, I'm looking at a certain track segment. Now here's a list of all of the defects in this track segment. That's something people don't really have right now. We've also gotten a lot of requests for a mobile version, which is a little counterintuitive because you might think that if you're not in the office, can't you just go look at something? But then you realize that a lot of our folks are kind of on the go. They're out fixing the system. And so they may want to pull up an image of something somewhere else. So that's, another one of those sort of future features we'd love to have. And then just a lot of little, a lot of little usability tweaks and things we've learned from, 3 or 4 years of doing this. So yeah, that's TunnelView. What? Okay. In the back? Yep. Right. Yeah, so the question was, have we considered adding spherical cameras to revenue rolling stock to get images more frequently? We haven't, because between the two track geometry cars, we get the entire system at least 3 times a year. And in what are known as the critical corridors, which is basically like the trunk lines in Manhattan, we get those approximately once a month. So we're pretty well served for that. It's not the kind of thing where we have a real deficit of images. We get images about as frequently as we need for what people are using it for. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yep. Right. Very good question. So the challenge is, and let me just go back to a right of way image. So you'll see the track geometry car has these very bright lights on the front, which you've probably been blinded by if you've ever seen it rolling through a station. And we do have a camera at the back of the train, but we can't get useful images from it because we can't run the lights at the back of the train. So that's really sort of the constraint there. We could capture images from both cameras at once and sort of stitch them together. There'd be some challenges because you have the length of the train in the middle. So it's, you'd have to sort of sync up the two sequences. But the real challenge is that we couldn't actually capture that data in the same run because we can't have the lights on at the back of the train. So that's basically the thing there. One more? Yeah, Alex. Oh, it is an internal tool, and we consider it an engineering resource and nothing more. A- And that's it. Matt? Yeah, so good question. Have other systems contacted us? Have we talked to other systems? So we actually picked up the idea from Japan. We don't think there are many other systems doing this. We've presented to a bunch of agencies, and there's been a reasonable amount of interest. It's not entirely clear what other systems are doing with the technology yet. We think this may still be a first in North America. So, yeah. All right. Thank you.
Sorry, and then interest of time, let's adjourn. Not adjourn, but let's